Hi, my name is Riley Busby, and I'll be talking about how the global pandemic has affected education. The coronavirus pandemic has affected over 1.2 billion children, putting them out of their classrooms. For those who don't know, the year 2020 has been infected with a worldwide pandemic that has shut down small businesses, raised curfews, and most importantly, shut down schools. I'm credible because not only was my senior year of high school cut short, but I had to start my very first year in college learning remotely. Everyone should have some idea about this. Whether you're a student or you know a student, many people have struggled with remote learning and not having the option to go to physical school. Today, I'd like to explain how the pandemic has made school difficult for students around the world. I will be talking about how teachers and parents should make education easier to get used to during this unusual time, and how the pandemic has affected students physically and mentally. Now that you know what's in store, I'm going to move on to my first point. One of the first steps to help students with remote learning would be to become more understanding and keep things as simple as possible. A lot of students struggle with school, and now that they have to learn to work by themselves, it gets hard for them to give the same work they did when they were in physical school. Teachers being strict on students during this time can cause major stress and anxiety. According to Forbes' 7 tips to make remote learning more effective, teachers are advised to keep lessons plans simple and try not to use more than a few platforms such as Google Docs, Slides, etc. Meaning, teachers should be more concerned with students' learning habits and how they're doing academically rather than giving them loads of stress by using difficult programs. Even though you think you'll benefit from complex work, try and make it a little easier on them while they're still getting used to this new way of learning. Now that I talked about that, I'm going to move on to my next point. This pandemic has also made many students of higher education more stressed. According to FIS.org, college students were under way more stress during the pandemic and remote learning than being in physical classrooms. Meaning, college students have been under way more stress during the pandemic than they should be. College is a time to figure out what you want to do with your life, which is stressful enough. Finding the right path for you, making sure you love doing what you want to do, adding the stress of the pandemic, curfews, and restrictions in the classrooms can take a toll on these individuals. Now that I'm done talking about the stress, let's move on to my last point. Not only has this pandemic changed the way students go to school, this pandemic has caused these young scholars to have an increase in their anxiety and other mental health issues. In this article, the Heladian explains a new study on how anxiety has increased dramatically and the lack of social interaction can lead to a huge increase in mental health problems, meaning that coronavirus has affected young individuals' mental health, which can be extremely draining, especially when it comes to maintaining school, maybe a new job, and other effects that the pandemic has brought into their lives. The loss of social interaction beyond their immediate family has caused significant increase in anxiety, depression, etc. Now that I'm done talking about that, let's move on to my conclusion. In conclusion, I explained how the pandemic has made school difficult for students around the world. I also went into detail how teachers and parents should make education easier to get used to during this unusual time, and how the pandemic has affected students physically and mentally. Whether you're a student or you know a student, you know this pandemic has made learning way more stressful and has had a huge impact on every single student. My call of action would be to support the students around you and help them if you can. Overall, students are still adapting to remote learning, and the people around them, whether classmates, teachers, family, etc., should be willing to be that extra help when the students are struggling. Thank you.